This episode is brought to you by Wisconsin Cheese. There's a reason when you think of Wisconsin, you think cheese. Cheese is a huge part of Wisconsin's history and future. In Wisconsin, the state of cheese, the tradition of cheese-making excellence began 180 years ago, before Wisconsin was recognized as a state. Immigrants traveled to settle in this lush green hills of Wisconsin, bringing their cheese-making traditions with them. These storied skills, combined with the freshest milk available, created a cheese-making culture that is uniquely Wisconsin. Wisconsin's 1,200 cheesemakers, many of whom are third and fourth generation, continue to pass on old world traditions while adopting modern innovations in cheese-making craftsmanship. Find your next favorite cheese at wisconsincheese.com.
Hey everyone, Greg Benson here, and if you're a regular listener of the Speakeasy, you probably know by now that I've been working to bring 100% pure, actually good-tasting agave nectar to the United States for a minute. But I wanted to give you a bit of an update. I actually got to travel to the farm where these amazing plants have been growing for decades, and it was just a genuinely moving experience. I got to see these agave in their natural habitat and see what it means to Rogelio, the farmer, to be able to care for the descendants of the same agave that his grandfather was growing almost a full century ago. That's why I'm proud to announce Quixote Imports, a new venture that's dedicated to preserving these agave and, yes, still bringing in the same fantastic, earthy, lightly fruity agave nectar that's going to make you wonder why you've been wasting your time with the crap at the grocery store. Plus, our fans here at the Speakeasy can get free shipping at checkout with promo code SPEAKEASY, so don't wait. Head on over to quixoteimports.com and see what agave nectar is actually supposed to taste like, and use promo code SPEAKEASY for free shipping. Salud.
You're listening to Heritage Radio Network.
So you don't shun the devil with your rock and roll load. Knows that country music's gonna save your soul. The devil finds his groove in them rhythm and blues that sing. It's gonna get you sun in the air.
Welcome back to the Speakeasy. It is 2025. It's a new year. We made it, everyone. I am Greg Benson. Sother and Damon are off today. Sother is working on something really cool that I don't think he would want me to tell you about, so I'm not gonna, but I'll just say watch his social media because there's something that's really neat coming down the pipeline and you're gonna want to know about it. As for me, I didn't really want to start 2025 off this way. I don't like to be a downer on this show, but some news came out while we were on break, and I feel like it would be booze podcast malpractice if I did not discuss it as it was still fresh, hot off the presses. So here we go. Per the New York Times, Surgeon General calls for cancer warnings. Surgeon General calls for cancer warning labels on alcohol. Now, first of all, this dropped early in the morning on January 3rd, when most of us, myself very much included, were still recovering from what we'd done to our bodies a full 48 hours later. So way to go, Surgeon General. I think if this administration is going to be remembered for anything, it's dropping critical news for people not a moment too late at exactly the right time. But where does that leave us as a podcast that talks about alcohol and as listeners who like a drink, as I assume all of you who are tuning in do? Now, my first instinct, as it always is, was to be sarcastic and glib and to laugh it off. I like to joke that after the countless stupid and self-destructive things that I have done in my life, I am much more likely to die being hit by a bus while I'm out jogging trying to better myself than by doing anything related to the bar. But as we were on break this past weekend, I did go to the memorial service of a friend who died from cancer. And she was not a heavy drinker. She was in the bottom percentile of heavy drinkers for this friend group, a friend group that included me, a friend group for which I was towards the top. And it made me realize that maybe this isn't a thing that we should joke off. Maybe this is a thing that we should, as a podcast, as a community, as an industry, take very seriously. So I'm coming out, me and the show are coming out as pro warning label on alcohol. We are not pro telling people what to do. We are not pro smacking the beers out of people's hands. We are pro giving everybody all of the information they need to make an informed, rational, and smart decision. All right? Because life is risk. Countless things that we encounter in our daily lives could end our lives in a series of bizarre and strange and darkly comic ways, right? You could slip in the shower and smash your skull open. You could electrocute yourself making waffles. Life is a dangerous thing and no one gets out alive. But we also take steps to mitigate that risk. All right. We buy bath mats. We install non janky waffle makers. And hopefully soon, we're going to make informed choices when it comes to drinking. All right. Because drinking, as again, I don't think I need to tell anyone who's listening to the show, can be very, very fun and joyful. That's why we do it. That's why no one has ever said, hey, do you want to go out for a round of cigarettes after work? All right. Alcohol is a useful thing that help us celebrate and cope and relax and mourn and just deal with the countless messy, weird emotions that come with being a human. And that's why, hopefully, when people know all of this information and have all of the facts and can make decisions for themselves, we'll all be celebrating and drinking and toasting with each other for as much time as we possibly can. And now I want to move on to something else that we're going to do at the top of this year, which is to say a bit of a mea culpa. If you've been a longtime listener to this show, you know that there is a certain city that we like to use as a bit of a punching bag whenever we're trying to make a point about a place where it might be difficult to find, culture. And seeing as this is a new year, seeing as this is the time to resolve, to be better, and to fix our past ills, I'm very, very excited to have a guest live from what I've been told is the amazing, wonderful city of Des Moines, Iowa. Joe Hayhoe, who is the creator, founder, mad scientist behind Blind Pig. Joe, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and agreeing to defend what, again, I've been told is the very fine city of Des Moines.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. Anytime I've got the opportunity to go to for Des Moines, I'm going to show up. And my batting average is pretty high in those situations, so I think we're going to fare pretty well here.
Is it 1,000, or are there some like notable misses
well,
where you've been
it depends. If I've been in the sauce a lot or a little, that kind of will really sway. How I'm gonna perform. But it's a work
less
day,
persuasive,
so
but more emphatic, I imagine.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
Well, so first of all, I just kind of want to start off with I'm a soft, entitled coastal elitist. I know vaguely where Des Moines is, but I don't know. Is there a river or a railroad there, or why Des Moines? What is the point of Des Moines, and what are some of your favorite things about it?
Yeah, so we have stoplights.
Really?
We've had those for a while now, which is nice.
Wow.
And we have paved roads, and we have hospitals and schools and businesses and malls. People still go to malls, so that's nice. We're on the Des Moines River, which is, flows right through the heart of downtown Des Moines, right past Principal Park, which is where the I-Cubs play. So we have sports. The I-Cubs are the minor league team for the Chicago Cubs.
Also makes sense.
We've got a G League basketball team, the Iowa Wolves, G League team for the Minnesota Timberwolves. We've got arena football. We've got hockey. So, we are a very, very cultured city that the elitists like to pick on because they've got their year-long nice weather. And, right now it's, I don't know, probably 12, 16 degrees outside, and there's a little bit of snow on the ground, but, we're used to it this time of the year.
That's only that's within 10 degrees of what it is here in New York. And there's also the gross, disgusting snow. I imagine our snow is actually probably grosser at this point than yours is. So, yeah. Well, tell me a little bit about your association with the state of Iowa, because you are not a native Des Moinesian. I don't know if I'm doing that right, but you are a native Iowan. Is that correct?
I'm a native Iowan, so I was born in Burlington, which is southeast Iowa. Burlington is a river town. It's right on the Mississippi River. Have seen many flood down there. Flood in 93 was pretty fun. Flood of 2008 was pretty fun. lived in Burlington until I graduated from high school. Then I went to school in Illinois. I tried to get a little bit more cultured by crossing the river. That didn't help out very much. Um, did a stint and graduated from Western Illinois University. And then I moved to Des Moines in late 2011 and have been here since. And it is the best way I describe it is it's the greatest little big city that I've ever lived in. Or even visited. It's fairly compact. Population, I think, with all the metros is pushing about 750,000. Plenty of stuff to do. I usually joke that, if I can't find it in Des Moines, I probably don't need it, whether that's a restaurant or a bar or any sort of retail product, anything along those lines. We raise our children here. They love it. We have great schools. Great outdoor activities, a ton of parks, a ton of recreation around the state and around the city. So cost of living is relatively low compared to a lot of places. And, I'm in the mortgage industry and we're seeing people honestly kind of flock to Des Moines as one of those areas because they can sell a house in California and pay cash here, or they can sell a house in Austin, Texas and pay cash here. And the cost of living is so much lower, and everybody's moving to remote work so they can work wherever they want. So they may as well work somewhere that's cheaper to live and fun to be at.
That's super cool, because I was in Richmond a little bit during the
Sure.
holiday break, which I think is kind of having a little bit of the same. I don't want to call it a renaissance, don't call it a comeback, but
Yeah.
it is having that influx of people from places like, obviously DC, but even as far away as like Baltimore, Philly, New
Yep.
York,
I've
where
heard
people
that.
were like, I'm sick of this shit. I want to move
Mhm.
somewhere where I can, not have to set hundreds of thousands of dollars on fire every year in rent,
Yeah.
and also still get a decent cocktail.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. And speaking of which, speaking of places to get a decent cocktail in Des Moines, I've heard that the Blind Pig is a good spot to do that.
It's a lot of just whiskey neat down there, but I can make a mean old fashioned. We're not going to muddle any fruit in that old fashioned. I'm going to tell
Good.
you that right now.
Good.
But yeah, it's been a fun adventure. And you were talking earlier about, how everybody was recovering from the activities of New Year's, and we were down there drinking a little bit. And yeah, it was about a 48-hour hangover after that one.
I know. Yeah. In fact, I was literally lying in bed thinking, oh, thank God I finally recovered from my New Year's hangover when I
Yeah.
opened my phone and read that headline. So it's like, wow, great.
Yeah.
Thanks, government.
Nice
Way
slap in
to
the face. Yeah.
It's not that I'm unhappy that you did it. You just did it in the worst way.
Yes.
Love what you're doing. Hate the way you're doing it.
Yeah.
Democrats.
Yeah.
Anyway, talk to me a little bit about kind of the cocktail scene there, because you've been there for God, going on a decade and a half now by my math.
Mhm.
And I mean, I have seen so much change happen in all of the cities that I've lived in that period of time, and I imagine that Des Moines is no different. What was it like, kind of seeing the cocktail scene there evolve, as I'm sure it did, and sort of what was your role in that? When did you kind of jump into the stream?
I mean, when I first moved here, it was nothing like it is now, and even from a standpoint of like craft breweries. 2011, I think we maybe had three or four.
Oh my Lord!
And I mean, we're at least 10 or so in Des Moines alone now. And then I think it was just kind of the cocktail scene renaissance of, one cocktail bar opened, everybody else saw the success, and then it kind of spiraled out of control from there. One of the first ones that I can remember was called The Exchange. It was right in downtown Des Moines, which used to be the most happening late night area to go. And now it's gotten pretty rough on the weekends. So not very many people go down there.
Mm-hmm. Rough as in
people getting
crime riddled, or
yeah.
I was or rough in that, the sort of frat bro to tech bro pipeline has just opened up and spilled a bunch of amateur hour shit out there.
I think it transitioned from normal people to violence is kind of the path that it was on.
Circle of life, baby.
Yep. The bar was called the Exchange. It was it was a stock market exchange-esque bar. So they had a ticker, and the price of drinks were all on supply and demand. So the price of drinks changed throughout the night based on how many people were buying them or how many people weren't buying them. I have a good buddy, Kevin. Like, we would go there, and he would always drink Johnny Walker Black because it was like $3.50 a pour because nobody was drinking it. So as more people bought it, that sticker price went up. So throughout the night, you're kind of shifting what cocktails you're drinking based on what those prices are. Because at that point, we were all kind of fresh out of college and, didn't have a ton of disposable income. So, I'll stomach some Johnny Walker for the night if it's going to get me, 6 drinks for my $20 or whatever it may be. That was probably the first cocktail bar that I really kind of got into. And then now it's just been an explosion. There's cocktail bars all over. There's speakeasies all over. There's tequila bars all over. There are a ton of great cocktail bars in Des Moines. It is a very, very heavy scene as far as good cocktail bars.
So was that sort of your Marvel hero origin story, like going there and kind of really becoming enchanted with, because it sounds like something like that would necessarily be an extremely lively place with like very dialed in bartenders who knew what they were doing. Was that kind of the moment where you saw that and were like, you know what, I could see this being a long-term thing for me? When did that happen for you?
I don't, and I'm not in the bar scene. I've never bartended. I'm not a mixologist. I'm a user, not a creator, I guess is the best way to put it. But yeah, in terms of kind of spiraling down that cocktail path that's about when it started. I mean, in college it was, Jack and Coke or Crown and Coke or whatever we can get our hands on for, $20 for a bottle. And then it slowly, evolved over time to, okay, if I've got $60, I can get a really good bottle of whiskey and sip on that. I don't need to go buy trash stuff and make, a whiskey and Coke to feel good. So yeah, I think once I kind of got into that cocktail scene is when that kind of took off a little bit for sure.
So tell me how that transitioned into Blind Pig. First of all, what is Blind Pig? Because the full official, the show name of your bar is Blind Pig Basement Pub. So where does the basement come into it? Let's start there.
It's in my house. It's in the basement of my house. So I built the pub in 2020, mid 2020. Was sitting
what was
around,
going on there that prompted you to do it by some chance?
And honestly, it wasn't. People often ask, was that my COVID project? I'm like, I guess just due to circumstance, yes, that's when it happened. I think it would have happened, irregardless, because I was just sitting around one night with some buddies. We were enjoying drinks at the kitchen table. At one point we had maybe a couple too many. And then I was like, I think I'm going to build a bar in the basement. And my wife's like, what did you say? I said, I think I'm going to build a bar in the basement. So our basement was 3/4 finished, had some room that wasn't really utilized. And even back at that point, we didn't utilize the basement a ton. So I knew that, it was kind of free range because I wasn't going to, boot the kids out of their play space or anything along those lines. So I think I had the idea to do it in like maybe August. And by September, I was tearing walls down and putting it in. And spent better part of about 2 months on it, mostly doing it nights and weekends. And then I had really no plan for what the look was going to be, anything along those lines. I knew that I wanted a Murphy door. I wanted a hidden entrance. So I kind of honestly started there. And then as I built it out, I just kind of figured what feel I wanted. And it just kind of turned into, I guess, a Prohibition era speakeasy is probably the best description for it.
So is this, who is the clientele? Like, is it open to the public, invite only, literally just you and your wife, or like, how does it work?
Friends and family. It's a home bar. It's not a business. It's a place to hang out, have good drinks, good conversation, listen to some music. Yeah, it is not a public establishment by any means.
I have to confess, I didn't, go to like stalker levels of
Yeah.
like looking into your Instagram, but I did look over it and I was not able to ascertain just by looking at a cursory glance whether this was like, I was like, is this an official business or is this okay?
Yeah, no, and I get that question a lot. I get a lot of people that reach out and they're like, hey, what are your hours? When can I come by? I'm like, no, you can't. Like, no, I don't know you. And B, like, this is in the basement of the home that we're raising our two children in. Like, this isn't like a rotating door of strangers coming in. It's mostly, friends, family, neighbors. That's the gist of it, of kind of who hangs out down there. And it's not, we're not down there drinking every night of the week by any means. But yeah, it just spiraled out of control as a personal space that I built in the house.
I mean, if everybody needs a project, man. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, so talk to me a little bit about, because this is, obviously gotten you a little bit of internet attention. Like, how do you feel about that as a result of this just being kind of like a fun little? I mean, I host a podcast about cocktails because I had a hobby for podcasting and a hobby for cocktails, and both of those got out of control. And now I do this for a living. So, like, when did it sort of occur to you that this had kind of like taken on a little bit of a life of its own?
I mean, the social media stuff seemed to really kind of pop off almost right away. And my wife likes to still kind of poke at me a little bit that she said from day one that I should have started a TikTok, like when I was building the place, because people eat up the DIY stuff. And I didn't start any social media for it at all until it was done, and probably until 4 to 6 months after I'd already built it. And then I posted a couple videos, and then they just took off like wildfire. And then it caught the attention of Murphy Door. So Murphy Door, who manufactures the hidden doors, they came into the basement and filmed commercials down there. It's been in Whiskey Advocate magazine. They came in and did a story on it. It's been in a ton of publications, and I'll never understand the power of the internet, because it's a crazy thing, and I don't think anybody can really wrap their mind around why one specific thing takes off, and then something that I spend 6 hours working on gets 500 views. So I really stopped kind of caring about any of that stuff. But yeah, it took off almost immediately and has kind of continued to build over time. I don't utilize TikTok much, because at the beginning I was like, I don't TikTok's for people that like doing like dance videos and stuff. Like, I don't know why I would make a video on there.
Well, I mean, you and I both have gray hairs. We're not the target audience for that app.
Yeah. So then I started there, and that's grown. I mean, I think TikTok's over 80,000 followers on TikTok, and I still don't really utilize it much at all. So then I transitioned over to Instagram, and I think Instagram is more of a genuine audience. People are more interactive on Instagram. Companies, I feel I can get attention of companies on Instagram a little bit easier. And that one's just continued to grow. And I think it's at 60,000 or close to 60,000 followers on there, which still blows my mind. I'll be out and about in Des Moines, the greatest city in the world, and people will recognize me because they follow it. And my wife loves to give me so much shit anytime we're at Target and somebody comes up and they're like, "Oh, I love your account. I love your content." I'm like, "Oh, thanks." She goes, "Oh, your dad thinks he's so famous now." I'm like, "No." But yeah, it's nuts. Social media is nuts. And the way that takes off, like, I don't have any aspiration to make this like my full-time gig, but if somebody wants to pay me money to do something with a product that I enjoy, then yeah, I'm all on board.
Well, talk to me a little bit about that, because it sounds like you have a pretty healthy relationship with, for lack of a better word, being an influencer. That's
Sure.
We don't have a better word.
I know.
mean, becoming suddenly and unexpectedly internet famous takes too long to say.
Yep.
But it sounds to me like you've got a pretty good lasso around it, because I've talked to a lot of people who, you get that first hit, that first video that goes like super viral, and you see like the 1.2 M thing next to your count on like Reels or TikTok or whatever. And it's a little bit like the first taste is free. You know where to come back if you need more. Right.
Yep.
And it seems like a lot of times, and I've been guilty of this too, of just like you have something that really blows up and then you just chasing that high.
Yep.
And it sounds to me like you've gotten to a point where you can be like, view it as a good thing in your life, but not something that you're like dependent on, because it's not like your identity. Am I getting the right read on that situation?
Yep. Yeah. I think there are a lot of people that I think there's a lot of people just, lack of better words, stress themselves out over it. Like they feel like they've got to get something up every day, or whatever their schedule is, and it's got to reach so many people. And if they don't do it, they're so defeated. And it's like, I could understand that if that were your sole form of income, but I also don't think that should be your sole form of income if you're stressing that much about every single post that you put up.
You can get a boring ass job making slideshows that'll pay like, a modest salary and won't give you a heart attack at age 16.
Yes. Yeah. And I think the other piece is just, I've always been, I guess, outgoing or social enough where, I mean, anything that I post is just something stupid that probably popped in my mind at some point. It takes a lot to be embarrassed. So I have no issue putting that stuff on social media. And for whatever reason, people tend to like that kind of stuff. So it's kind of easy for me, but I'm also not stressing of like, oh my God, I just posted this video and it's 24 hours later and I only have 50 likes on it. I honestly, I don't care. Like, I just generally do not care. The best way I put it is anything that I put on that page, I'm putting on that page because it made me laugh or I like it or whatever. I'm putting it on there selfishly for me, not for everybody else. If everybody else enjoys it, great.
Yeah. No, the way that I kind of like to think about, because we all love those cheap, easy little dopamine rushes of like hearing the likes ding in our pocket, right? And I think the best way to think about it is like they're like Skittles, like Skittles are fun little like bop of little sugary, sweetness there, but you can't make your whole diet Skittles.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
there gotta be other more fulfilling things that also, feature into your like dopamine food pyramid, like, family, loved ones, friends, hobbies, purpose, fulfillment, whatever it is. Like you can't, if you're eating nothing but Skittles, you're gonna, I don't know. Does that give you scurvy? I don't know. You probably won't be very healthy.
It'll get a Surgeon General warning at some point. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. But we'll have those on a packet of Skittles in no time.
But I don't find pleasure in spending a lot of time creating content, I guess is the best way that I can put it. Like if most of the stuff pops in my head and I put it on the internet within an hour or two and it's just something simple, short, not a big production value. Most of it's filmed on my phone. I try, it's not a stressor, I guess is the best way that I can put it. And I never want it to be.
I think you've learned a lesson that everyone in this space, or who aspires to be in this space, needs to learn. Maybe on their own, but hopefully, if that's not the case, maybe saying this into a live microphone helps. But like the videos that you spend like 5 hours on, if that only gets like 100 views, you're going to be devastated. Whereas like the next day, you'll just kind of fart something out in 30 minutes, and it'll like get hundreds of thousands of likes.
Exactly.
Like,
yes.
We're all at the mercy of the algorithms. So don't explode your own head over it.
100%. Yep.
Well, so it's made you, you said you've been made into a little bit of I don't want to put words in your mouth or give you attention that you don't want, but a little bit of like a locally well-known celebrity, at least among like general folks. Does that kind of,
people
does
in
that
the
translate?
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. But how does that translate over into kind of like the bar scene in Des Moines? Like, do you sort of go out to bars now when you do go out for a drink or a cocktail and kind of get like recognized?
Yes. Yeah. And honestly, like I'll be 40 this year. So like I've all but almost retired from the bar scene. So like if I'm going to a bar to have drinks, it's like maybe once a month at most, maybe twice. And it's, we're going to go to a couple favorite bars, get a couple cocktails, grab dinner, and that's it. Like, but yeah, it's definitely not uncommon to be at, especially at a cocktail bar or a whiskey bar, and depending on how many drinks I've had, I'll talk to you for 5 minutes or 3 hours. So yeah.
So now that you're being a little bit more, as happens when, time and aging comes for us all, now that you're being a little bit more selective about how often you're going out and where you're going to, what's kind of lighten it up for you, and how does that translate into the greater kind of like Des Moines cocktail bar scene?
Yeah.
Like what are some trends that you're really into, and what are you seeing on the nights that you do go out?
I for one am more into just a classic cocktail. I don't need the flair. I don't need the crazy variations. Honestly, 9 times out of 10, I just want just a solid, good old fashioned. And I've found the bars that make those on point every single time. I don't have to tell them what type of old fashioned I want. I don't have to tell them what type of whiskey I want. I don't have to tell them what type of bitters I want. I don't have to tell them not to muddle fruit in the glass. Like, I know when I order the old fashioned, it's going to show up in front of me and it's just going to be perfect. So I've got my list of bars that I can go to and know that it's going to be good every single time. And that's honestly pretty much what I stick to.
So that is kind of exactly what I've seen in, I live in New York City, obviously,
Yeah.
but like, I do a lot of for work traveling to other major market cities like, Chicago, New
Yep.
Orleans, Vegas, LA. And what you're describing is a pattern that I've seen playing out in all those places where, mixology got to a point where it was so inaccessible and so complicated that there was almost this swing back to, you know what, I just want a fucking competently made
Yeah.
old fashioned. I don't,
Yep.
clarification is great. Like,
Yeah.
molecular carbonation is great. I just kind of want some whiskey and some sugar and some unmuddled fruit. And I'm
Yep.
going to lay my bias cards on the table here. I always sort of assume that like the trends that happen in those cities I just mentioned hit every other city on earth
Oh yeah.
a year,
At
2,
some point.
3
Yeah.
later. Yeah.
Yep.
Is that the case? Or are you kind of seeing that like it's kind of that timeline unfolded between the years that you've been
No,
there, like
I mean, yeah,
2011 and now?
I'd say I've had several that I go to that have just been consistently like that for 4 or 5 years at least, where
I mean,
they'll have the menu, I think, is going a little bit more towards traditional recipes or traditional cocktails. I think the big flair and fancy and crazy cocktails were almost like a social media phase where, it was a matter of, hey, come get this cocktail. And, hey, by the way, take a picture of it and tag us on social media so people can see what we just spent 9 minutes working on, while 3 guys at the end of the bar just wanted a Busch Light and they had to wait. So I think, I don't know, are those drinks bad? No, they're good. They're delicious. A lot of them are fruity and I would drink them all day long, but I just want an old fashioned made, traditionally. And I've found my sweet spots that I can go to, and again, it's just a matter of that's how they're already doing it, so they're not trying to overcomplicate anything. And in my mind, it's like anything: if you give people too many options, they're not going to be able to make a decision. Or if you give them too many options, they're never going to drink through your menu. I think I've seen a lot of bars try to, at least the favorite ones that I go to, have tried to kind of simplify their menu a little bit more, whereas they're not. And it probably helps for the bar too, because they get in their cadence of making the same drinks over and over, so they can whip those out faster. Whereas if you've got 30 different cocktails, that's probably going to slow every bartender down, I would imagine.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I like that trend is happening too. And it sounds like it's sort of is that a citywide thing? I'm wondering if I can chalk this up to a Des Moines thing or a Joe Hayhoe thing, or maybe
It's
just an aging thing.
probably just where I'm, maybe just being selective of where I'm going is probably most of it, to be honest with you.
Well, let me ask you this, because this is one thing that I love experiencing whenever I go to a new city, is like seeing if there are any sort of like little regional things. Because I mean, the world is so flat, culture is so ubiquitous at this point that, like,
Yep.
I mean, you can go to Philly and have a cheesesteak, or go to, San Francisco and have a bagel, but like, it's all, you can get the trade secrets are so easily accessible
Yeah.
in these
Yeah.
supercomputers we have in our pockets that it's easy to get the thing that the place is known for anywhere that gets, 5G service.
Exactly. Yep.
But that's why I kind of love little things like, the Wisconsin old fashioned, or like the shot of Malort in Chicago, or
Yeah.
this thing that I realized when I was in the Twin Cities recently wasn't as well known as I thought, but it's called a poor man's martini, where it's essentially a beer, a light beer, usually a
Yep.
grain belt or a Hamm's, with like half a dozen olives in it.
Okay.
I think it's great. I think
Yeah.
it's great. And I went to this amazing dive bar called Palmer's. Shout out to Palmer's. Tony Zaccardi, owner, friend of the show. Love that guy. I went there and I ordered one, and the bartender looked at me like I just asked her to serve me antifreeze. And I was
Yeah.
like, I thought this was like a Twin Cities thing. Is this not your deal?
Yeah.
Did a little research. Apparently it is a thing. It's just less of a thing than I thought. But
Okay.
is there anything that you kind of think of as like, yeah, this is sort of like, this is our drink, this is the regional drink? Or like, if someone's visiting, are you like, you
Yeah.
got to experience this one thing that we do here?
I mean, we drink a lot of Busch Light. That's probably the beverage. Like, if you asked anybody in Iowa what's the state drink, it's probably going to be Busch Light. 9 times out of 10, I would imagine. Yeah. Not anything cocktail wise so much. Cedar Ridge Distillery is in Iowa. They are a great distillery. They put out a ton of great product. So they are very present in pretty much every single bar. So if you're a whiskey drinker and live in Iowa, you know of Cedar Ridge. But yeah, I would say honestly, it's probably an ice cold Busch Light is the drink of Iowa.
I mean, my first beer ever was in Chicago, and it was a Busch Light. So,
Yeah.
it's like, my first album I ever bought was Linkin Park. And you know what? I
Nice.
might have discovered that there's other stuff out there that might be, air quotes better, but like, I'll still have a certain fondness for
Yeah.
the one that started me
Yeah.
on that journey,
Uh-huh. Yep. Yeah, we don't have a Des Moines handshake, although I made an Iowa handshake one time, which was a Busch Light with a I guess it wasn't truly Iowa. It was Busch Light with a shot of mellow corn. We're the most produce the most corn in the country, so get some corn whiskey in there. I don't think that one will take off too well with the locals, but I enjoyed it.
I mean, you know what? It sounds like a refreshing shot in a beer. And really,
Yeah.
this is what we were just talking about. It's like, sometimes at a certain point, you just got to go back to basics, right?
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
So where do you see things going now? Because you and I were talking a little bit too about how there's been this sort of, you know, migration of the digital nomad class from a lot of major cities where they used to have to go to do jobs like, I don't know, be a podcast producer, just to pick a random career out of the thin air. Do you see that kind of driving tastes in the city, as someone who kind of like has been around for a little while?
It could. I mean, I think it will. I think it's with anything. You get enough of a influx of people that are missing something that they were used to. Somebody's bound to cater to that, whether it's that specific person or somebody that's heard enough times that, hey, why can't I get a poor man's martini? So I think, over time, all that stuff will shift. I haven't seen much of it, not on the drink side of things by any means in Des Moines. I think you probably see that a lot more in the food scene for sure. As you have people come in from different regions or even different countries, you're going to start seeing new restaurants pop up that, cater to what their flavor profile is in terms of a meal. I haven't seen it too much as far as cocktails go, no.
Well, talk to me a little bit about the food scene, kind of what's happening there. It sounds like you've got your eye on a few
The
developments.
food scene is great. I think the food scene in Des Moines is great.
Do tell me more.
Whether you want a new restaurant opened here, a little over a year ago, called Oak Park. It is the quintessential fine dining dinner restaurant. I mean, it's, the white tablecloths. Everybody knows the menu without looking at it. Great cocktails. All of their food, for the most part, I believe, is locally sourced from the state. It is top notch. We go there. We try to go there once a month, once every other month. Right down the road from there is a burger joint called Lachelle's that has the absolute best smash burger I've ever had in my entire life. I could eat there 3 or 4 days a week and be perfectly fine with it. The other side of the street from there is a Korean restaurant, and then there's a Thai restaurant. I mean, there is pretty much any type of food you can think of, you can find in Des Moines, which is great.
I have to sympathize because I live in a part of Brooklyn that a lot of people like to rip on me for. It's a little more suburban isn't the right word, but
Okay.
it's not Bushwick. There aren't like 4 a.m. rave parties happening here with your roommate who's a DJ and smokes hand-rolled cigarettes. Like, it's not that kind of place. And the thing I love about it is that, one, I always found that kind of shit a little bit annoying, and now I'm just old enough that I don't have to pretend to be with it to make people think I'm cool. But also the fact that when you do get a little further away, like I have, but literally, I'm not pulling anyone's leg, like a globally ranked Palestinian restaurant, one of the first restaurants ever in Brooklyn to be on the Zagat Guide. It's around the corner from me. There is a taco truck that makes the best burrito tacos I've ever had in my entire fucking life. Parks around the corner from my apartment until 5 a.m. 5 a.m. Like, there is something to be said for like not having to swim upstream, because that's when you get these really truly interesting kind of entrepreneurs that come in and open up these spots that have a little bit more room to breathe and experiment.
No, it's any food that I can think of or ever have an appetite for. It's within a 10-minute drive at any given time, more than likely.
I love that. So I appreciate. So it sounds like you firmly put your stamp of approval on Des Moines, Iowa.
I do. I honestly, I can't think of anywhere else I would rather live, just because, I mean, people in Iowa in general, but Des Moines as well. I mean, we're not called Iowa nice for nothing. Like, they're genuinely good people. I'm not saying that New York or LA or anywhere else aren't. I think it's just small enough that it still has that small town feel, but big enough that it has everything you could need.
I totally agree. And I think that is something that I sort of encounter when I go anywhere. Except Philadelphia. Sorry, Philadelphia, but you should know this about yourself. You're just a mean, flaming garbage heap of a city, and God bless you, that's your thing. But
I've been to Philly a couple times. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, so you know what I'm talking about. And anyone here who's from Philly who's listening does too. But like, anywhere else I've gone, like, I find that people are just generally nice. I think that living in a large enough city just gives you more opportunities to bounce off of other human beings like marbles in a way that just gets aggravating. Like, earlier today, I was going into the grocery store and I was standing out in the cold because the guy in front of me with a cart was just taking forever looking at some apples by the front door. And all I wanted to do was go in and get one thing. And I think that if a genie had come down and be like, hey, man, you want me to disintegrate this guy right now so you can get it 5 seconds faster? I would have been like, maybe. Like, I probably would have. But that's the thing about, going to these smaller cities, is that you get less of that. And I feel like that kind of translates into what we were just talking about, the fact that you can get these entrepreneurs who are either just trying to get their first big break or have just been doing too much of what we just talked about and are like, fuck this, I'm out, and want to just operate at like a nicer, some might say better pace of life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, okay, you've convinced me. And am I know it's not open to the public, but if I come out to Des Moines, am I welcome at the Blind Pig
100%.
Basement Pub?
You'd have to. Yeah, I would be offended if you did not.
All right, thank you. Well, I would be offended if I did not too.
Especially
so I'll make sure that I do.
Then we would have to go to Winchester Pub has a great old fashioned, Bartender's Handshake to get a great old fashioned, Oak Park to get a great old fashioned. I mean, we would just have to do an old-fashioned tour of Des Moines and hit all the great spots.
I love that. Would
Yeah.
one of them make me a Wisconsin old fashioned if I asked, or would that be frowned upon?
You're going to have to do that after we depart ways, because I won't be in your presence when you drink that. But yeah, we could probably find you one of those. Yeah. Uh-huh.
All right, awesome. And one last question I want to ask you.
Yeah.
Now that we are resolving here at the Speakeasy to stop picking on your fine city,
Yes.
who would you like to nominate next for us to dump on for the foreseeable future until we have someone else on to prove us wrong?
Maybe, I think Lansing, Michigan doesn't get shit on enough. My dad's from Lansing, so I spent enough time in Lansing as a kid that, even as a child, I thought it was maybe not my cup of tea. So I think Lansing is the new armpit of America.
That's the capital of Michigan. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yes, I think so. I'm
Okay,
not 100%.
Well, the reason I remember this is my friend who's a lobbyist kind of collects state capitals the way I collect baseball stadiums, just trying to visit all of them.
Uh-huh.
And she was saying to me, you're not the first person to tell me that Lansing, Michigan sucks, because she was listing off the ones that she'd been to. And then she's like, inland Lansing's the worst. Lansing is the one that
there's at least there's more people on my side with that one.
Oh yeah, no, it sounds like you're not alone. It's you, it's your dad, it's my friend. So yeah, we're all in agreement here. Lansing, Michigan sucks. That is the official position of this podcast. Des Moines
has clearly been ridden of the title of the picked on state for the podcast. Now it's Lansing, Michigan.
Excellent. And it will stay that way until our first show of 2026, when we have to have someone else on to apologize to.
I like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, hey, thank you so much for joining us on the Speakeasy today. Joe Hayhoe runs the Blind Pig Basement Pub. Is there some social media handles? Any other projects you want to plug?
That's it. It's at the Blind Pig Basement Pub on any socials I'm on. I don't even know which all socials I'm on. Instagram for sure. Instagram, TikTok. There's a Facebook. I think I've got a YouTube that maybe has one video up. And I believe I'm on Twitter or X or whatever it is now. Instagram is where you will get the most up-to-date news from the Blind Pig.
That is exactly the same way that I operate social media too. I'm like, I know I have an Instagram. I think there are some others.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
YouTube is half a social media platform, so I don't know if that counts. It's like that and where I go to watch SNL because I don't have cable anymore.
Exactly.
So
Yep.
Awesome. Well, look for him on maybe a few other platforms, but definitely Instagram.
That is the one. Yes.
Well, that is going to do it for us this week on the Speakeasy. Be sure to tune into HRN for many more fine programs just like this one. And we are actually in the middle of a bit of a HR renaissance here. We are redoing a lot at the radio station. They have been super good to us for the entire, 14 years now that we've been on the air, and we really love them, and they're doing a lot of really cool, amazing, exciting stuff. So we're going to put a link in the show notes to the main website there. Check them out and keep in touch with all of the amazing stuff that they're doing, because there's lots of other great shows just like this one and more good new stuff coming in 2025. So stay tuned. And speaking of more good stuff, if you like what we have here, please sign up and become a regular on our Patreon. You get all sorts of good goodies that you've certainly heard me talk about before, including bonus episodes, video podcasts, cocktail recipes from all of our guests, and a free kit from our good friends at Shaker and Spoon every single month. So become one of our regulars. Link to that is in the show notes as well. And be sure to tune in next week when we're going to have something pretty cool coming on. South African agave is a thing. I found out about this recently. I've been hearing about it for many, many years, but I got my first chance to actually taste it. And it's different. It's wild. It's cool. And the good folks from Sango are going to be on next week to talk about it. So tune in for that. But for now, that is going to do it for us this week on the Speakeasy. Thank you so much for listening. And until next time, cheers, everybody.
So you don't shun the devil with your
The Speakeasy is powered by Simplecast. Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food and drink radio supported by you. Keep in touch at heritageradionetwork.org/subscribe.